the sanctuary of light in the Light Institute, welcome each and all of you to this time of knowings and invite you to bring forward the questions in your hearts. So it's very informal. Who would like to begin?
I know how you... Never mind, Bob, you're on.
Sure. Question is about personal responsibility versus someone's coming to save us. That plays out so many ways in so many lives.
Yes, it does.
What would be your take on that?
I think that that is probably one of the most important themes on the planet at this time. When we say personal responsibility, we have never been taught, really, what it means to take personal responsibility. And what I mean by that is, it's not your fault, you're to blame, you must fix it, but rather the power of the word responsibility. I can do it. I will contribute to that. This is where we want to come in our consciousness, that all that is happening is a gift to us, allowing us to express the purpose of our lives, to feel that we belong. We belong to all the things that happen on this planet, and that through our own consciousness, we can contribute. And once we have that sense, then that who's going to come and save us can begin to dissolve away. It's a theme that I talk about a lot, because that who's going to come to save us is an old residue of the need for survival, the fear of not surviving, which is psychogenetically imprinted into all humans because we come from primordial man. We come from tribal situations. We come from religious wars. We come from all of this repertoire that has been passed down to us again and again, generation to generation to generation. And so we have never developed a sense within ourselves that we're the ones with the power. That it's not the gods, that it's not the fathers, that it's not the governments, it's not something outside us, but that we came here not as an accident from our parents, but because as souls we chose to come at this time. We chose our parents. We came in as a soul group. We all know each other. There are no people on this planet at all who are not capable of completely changing the realities that we experience here. So we've come as a soul group at a pivotal time on planet, at a great time, a time that can be of happiness and magic, to begin to utilize all that we've learned through many incarnations of the soul. And this is the first time, really in the history of humanity, where we can access other lifetimes. We can really look in to the pulse and the evolution of our souls to see how we learned about power, how we learned about misuse of power, how we learned about magic, how we learned about love, how we learned all these things as individuals and as groups that we can apply on the planet at this time. And so I feel that we are coming to that we're really truly coming to that. And as we see that we have incarnated, it's amazing now that over the last 50 years, people have been introduced to the concept of reincarnation. And so a great majority of humanity feels that this is true. When you know that you have had many bodies, that you have many gifts, many possibilities, then it will help you to release your fear of dying and survival. Once we can let go of that, but if I don't survive, this is the end, I'll go to heaven or I'll go to hell, and that's all there is. Once that dissolves away from us, we can really put our attention onto, what do I want to give here? You know, when something is important or passionate to you, it isn't that you have to go out, you know, waving the flag. It's that you focus your consciousness on it. And you recognize the power of human focus to change energies that suddenly create synergy. The right people, the right situation, the right time, and something that seemed impossible changes or comes into form. And that's what we're here for. And it's very exciting because we're going to do it. And so we can either whine and complain and say we're helpless, but in the end we will get the lesson. We will get the lesson now, in this lifetime, that it is ourselves. And it's not a negative thing, and it's not a fearful thing, but it's a joyful thing. Just like little children who say, let me do it, let me help. That is within us. And every time we hold a positive thought, every time we invest in our consciousness or in our actions in some way into the change, we can feel the power of our lives so that we don't have to be depressed, we don't have to feel helpless. This is a great time to incarnate on our planet. And so, another thing that's very important about personal responsibility is that in the past we have had that sense, well, look at this as happening, but what can I do about it? What we're discovering now, which is germane to this moment in our evolution, in our human evolution, is that we are a group animal. And when we begin to trust each other, when we begin to enfold all the power and the potential and the creative energies that we have, we can do things that an individual could not do.
Oh.
Yes, I hope. And so I think that humans are going through a transformation right now, a maturity, a catapultic leap, if you will, of our species that's bringing us to a place of feeling like we can look at any situation and say, this is not the end. This is not the future. This is just, take a look at that. What are the many solutions to that? What's the one I'm going to bring to it? If nothing more than extending light, if nothing more than the power of my consciousness. And what does that mean? It means that you want to see a situation, a difficulty, and discover within yourself, what would it look like if it were done? What would it look like if there were no war? What would it look like if you moved the hurricane, which we at Nijoni and the Light Institute have done a number of times, when it's come right to the shore. And in our meditations, we have gently said, back to sea, over there. And it's happened like a miracle. It isn't that there's anything special about us. It's simply that through our collective awareness, we have said there's another choice. So instead of what we've done in the past, where we've used the yang energy to control and say it has to be this way, or override nature, it's a way in dealing with nature and in dealing with each other that we say, look, how about over here? You know? So we come into concert with energies that then can express themselves without doing harm, without being destructive. And we always call the rain and look at the environment around us, because it helps humans to realize that we do have the right to say, and let it rain. You know? And so personal responsibility isn't really a cosmic boot. It's not really shame on you because you didn't take responsibility, but it's look at the opportunity you have. Trust yourself that you have the power to take that responsibility. That powerful people say, I'll do it. I'll find something. And so what is connected to the willingness to take personal responsibility is to dissolve away the weight of the fear of blame and judgment. And we're coming through that. It's something that has occurred through the Judeo-Christic era, and we're beginning to see that it's something that's been imprinted in us, that don't make a mistake, or you will be judged, or you'll be punished, or you'll be blamed. And it's really time, on the one hand, to stand up for us in an individuated way, and at the same time embrace us as a whole. So that we no longer are afraid to step forward or to be visible, because we know that someone else's judgment of us isn't the story. It isn't the end all. It isn't what is important in your life. We know enough about how the emotional body functions now to realize that when somebody blames you, they're just saving themselves from feeling blamed. That there's a mirror action that takes place. And that We really don't have to be in reactive mode to what the rest of the world is thinking, but we have to be true to our hearts. And that doesn't mean that we can't make a mistake, but we can laugh through our mistakes. We can fall on our faces and say, aha, what did I learn from that? And pick up and go in the other direction. And as we learn these laws of energy, we become more peaceful. We're realizing that just our presence, just our consciousness in our bodies on this plane is important. And so taking responsibility can be a joy and something that really says, I'm willing to be visible. Another great theme on the planet at this time is visibility. Will you show yourself? You know, will you be unafraid of these echoes from other lifetimes, from other points of reference, from psychogenetic inheritance, from your parents, from your cultures? Yintalo. That says, don't stick out. Don't think you're special. Don't wave your power around. Hide. No, we need to be visible now. And we need to be visible with the laughter about it all. Not so breathless about whether we do it wrong or we do it right, but that we are here. And so visibility is very, very important at this time, to dissolve away our fear of that, or our parents' fear of that, or our great-great-grandparents' fear of that, and just to be who we are.
It's about a 3-word mantra to disconnect responsibility from blame. I hadn't thought about that before, but I believe when I hear the word responsibility, I do hear blame.
Of course you do.
So what's a quick way to disconnect those? Because they really aren't connected.
Yes, they really are. They really are. And I can think for a moment, I don't know about a 3-word, but again, I would say that detaching it from blame would be to a sense of self, a sense of self that says, I can, I will, I am. And again, feeling the joy of that. Because in those moments that we feel true to ourselves, there is an energy of peace that comes to us. So I'd like to do a little exercise in consciousness just quickly for a moment, 1 second, that will lock us into shifting that. So close your eyes for a moment and take a deep breath into your body and ask your body to give you a tool that will help you to take responsibility with joy, with grace, fearlessly. It could be a symbol or an object or a color. But just allow your body to give you something at this moment that will begin to instigate this power of responsibility. See what it is. Symbol, object, or color that will allow you to embrace responsibility. Whatever comes into your consciousness, draw that tool into your body and command every cell of your body to hold the image or the essence of that tool that will allow you to take responsibility, again, with joy, with pride, with happiness. Breathe deeply and really feel it in every cell of your body. And take a deep breath and open your eyes. So, doing something like that, asking your higher self to touch your body where you have the power of responsibility. What did you get for a tool?
Instantly. 1 word, gratitude.
Fantastic.
Focus there and all the other stuff vanishes.
Falls away. Beautiful. Beautiful. Great. Thank you. And now
I was just going to comment on that because it's something a while ago I thought a lot about, and I was getting very uncomfortable with taking on more responsibility, feeling heavy. And all of a sudden I realized if I could really hear the word, the ability to respond is so different
Beautiful.
than to react.
Yes.
And that was all I needed. I
Fantastic.
felt everything lift off of me.
Fantastic, because reaction is always a defense mechanism. It's always, this is impinging upon me, I must do something, and reaction is always about survival. But responding is, I am the giver, I give something to this.
It's about living and giving instead
Yes.
of using your energy to be blocking.
Yeah. Fantastic, wonderful. What else? Yes.
I have a question about hereditary illnesses, like Huntington's chorea.
Yes.
Like, what lesson is there to learn, and why did it come? Like, why did these diseases arise?
Yes.
And can we heal them?
I think so, absolutely. I guess Huntington's is a conversation in the nervous system. And so, again, first of all, I have to offer forth my perception of inheritance in terms of disease. What I've found, and what I say in all of my books, is that there's only one disease. It's the disease of fear. The inheritance that you get is not really, a propensity to nervousness, but it's something that you mimic. You might have an aunt who had it, and there may be a connection between you and your aunt from another lifetime. And so you, from the time you're in your mother's womb, you are aligned to this energy of this being. And so whatever's frayed the nerves or froze the nerves or irritated the nerves of that person is something that you have replicated. Not because you were destined to have it, but because through the many incarnations and incarnations with that person, you have aligned yourself to their emotional sense of reality. Disease is always a conversation of, I can't face my life on some level or another. Let me out in some level or another. And so Huntington's, when there is that thing that happens to the nervous system, it is coming from an experience you have. So I know that you're doing incarnational work right now, and one of the things that I would recommend, if that's something that you have, it's not. Okay, well, if somebody had that, what I would say is, if they could look at, well, let's see, I'm starting to have this problem, and my grandfather had this disease, and so the doctors are saying, well, it's hereditary. Then what I would say is to look into a lifetime with that person that caused you to take on their energy, take on that pattern in body. And in doing that, very often it just disappears. I feel that all things can be healed. Now I have to say that sometimes death is the greatest healer. But when we recognize that there is no disease that doesn't come from some place that squeezes, that's what fear does. Fear contracts the body. When you contract your body emotionally or physiologically, you have no strength, you have no power. So any energy that's fraying you, whether it's stress or it's a virus or evil chi, as we would say in Chinese medicine, it can just penetrate you. You have no protection. And so very much in any kind of disease state, we want to dissolve away the fear of your own body that it's going to do something to you, the fear that the world is dangerous, and to look from whom did you inherit those concepts, because again, our religions, our schools, our parents, our societies, our cultures, our families imprint these things in us. And once a person begins to look at lifetimes and see lifetimes in which they're powerful, that they've healed themselves, magic happens. I see it all the time. People that have this disease and that disease, and suddenly, quote, it goes into remission. It disappears. It disappears because it no longer serves them. The source of the disease, not the symptom of the disease. And that's the difference. So if you're looking at, we have to support the nervous system, or we're going to do this or that for the nervous system, no, come deeper. That's how I got into this work, because I worked so long with physical bodies in the health world, and I just realized that it's not the virus. It's how we feel at that moment. So for example, one of the things that we do when someone has a disease would be, we have a set of sessions called soul lessons through the body. So we'd say, ask your body to take you back to the moment that that disease entered you. Not the moment that you knew it was there, that you had the symptoms, but the moment it entered you. And it might have been in the womb. It might have been when you were a child. And here again comes this play of copying somebody else's sorrow, taking on the anger of your father, etc., etc., etc. Or the fear, or something like that. And that makes us vulnerable. And then we define ourselves in a limited way. And then the seed for disease is there. And the moment that you lose your sense of self, the moment that you feel depressed, that you feel that, I can't face my life, that's when it comes up and is visible. And whenever we say to someone, when was the first time that the symptom of this disease came to you? 100% of the time, it's when we felt we couldn't face our lives. And all of us feel this way, one time or another. But this is the reason why I've never felt that whole conversation of something is communicable. Because maybe 50% of the people get it, and the other 50% don't. Why don't they? And when I have investigated that, because I was in the Peace Corps and I dealt with a lot of communicable diseases, the people or the children who didn't get it were the people that, I'm too busy. I'm too busy, I'm too important, I have to go play. It wasn't in their consciousness. They didn't see the value. Very often with sickness, from the time we're little, if we're sick, it frightens our mothers and our fathers. It frightens them because they love us. It frightens them because they don't want to be blamed because you're sick, and so someone might think that they didn't do a good job parenting you, And so there's all of this interfamily conversation that goes on that needs to be explored. And so very often from the time that we're children, we learn that if we're sick, we're going to get extra attention, extra food, extra love. And all little children want extra food, extra attention, and extra love. It's part and parcel to be human. Part of our maturity is to feel the love inside us, for ourselves, to get the love from our higher selves, from nature, from other octaves, And so there are many things to look at when we talk about inherited diseases that modern or Western medicine has not yet utilized. And those are the things that create the magic of healing. What else?
When we drove from Denver to Griscom, we were so stunned by the blanket of chemtrails.
Yes.
And to the best of the extent of my own being, I tried to look at it as you were talking about it, that I can't get sad, because it really was making me sad. The amount of pollutants that were being put in the air. And yet I thought that there is something we can do. I would love you to address that, because how can we, through meditation, through prayer, through whatever, through imaging, but surely it's time to do this.
There are many things you can do. You can speak about it publicly. You can raise public awareness of it. You can complain to airlines because they do dump it. And they do dump it. What's interesting that I've noticed in New Mexico is whenever we get these nice little rain clouds, we start getting chemtrails. It's almost as if something is keeping the rain from coming. But I'm not really interested in who's the bad guy here. So you can be actively, visibly involved. You can sit in your meditation and extend your meditation to it. There are two aspects of that I would say. One is, you remember, I can't remember who wrote a little book about that, and talking about puffing clouds. this is like 40 years ago, when somebody said, oh, now go outside and look at that cloud and imagine that it dissolves, it disappears, you know?
Yes.
One of the things that I have found very important in terms of calling the rain are these laws of energy, which is you can bring from the unmanifest something into manifestation. It's the same principle to take something that's in manifestation and dissolve it back into unmanifest. And so it's important for us to realize that we're not stuck with something that appears. It can disappear as well. I one time went to Russia and proposed to the Academy of Science. I have a project which is still in my consciousness, still there, which is called Human Potential and Global Responsibility.
Wow.
Human potential and global responsibility. And so I went there and I said, you have a lot of radiation. I was there right after Chernobyl. And so what I would propose is that we teach the children in the schools to demanifest the radiation, because you can do that, you know. And they put the KGB on me instantly. And it was a very interesting experience for me, but I just kept talking about it. And then one of the things that happened, that came out in Russian television 3 months later, is that they took a psychic. And in Russia, you can either be punished and be put in the underground forever for being psychic, or they hold you up to the world and say, these are our great psychics. Remember that manipulation of matter began when the Russians in 1960 were using these kinds of techniques to demanifest, to move matter, to do all these kind of things. They've been exploring this for a long time. So 3 months after I was there, they did a public television thing where they had a psychic go into a building that had a lot of chemical debris. I can't remember if it was, I can't remember what the chemical was, but it was some toxic chemical in the building, and demanifested, and they measured it and all of that, and then they brought the psychic out and said, see, the psychic has cleared this building. And so I smiled and said, thank you very much, you know, because they got the idea. And so,
It's like Ho'oponopono.
Absolutely. And so we can do this very thing, and it's fun to do it. And again, instead of squeezing and saying it's terrible, it's terrible, it's terrible, it's like the conversation of radiation. The increase in radiation on the planet causes disease. My higher self said probably 20 years ago that the 3 major diseases on the planet were cancer, AIDS, and radiation. And we're seeing the cancer and the AIDS, but we haven't seen the radiation, but it's there. And so what is the gift of the radiation? The gift is that we can quicken, we can move faster, so we can align with that radiation. We're not going to die, we're not going to get sick, because we know scientifically that if your megahertz are above 56, you can't get any disease. So there are conversations about how to get your megahertz up that much. And so the same thing is with the chemtrails, as is radiation. We can neutralize those pollutions. Now, after Chernobyl, I was in Europe, and you know, there were frogs with excess legs. Plants were 3 times the size that they normally were. Milk and cows were full of radiation, etc., etc., etc. So these things happen. They could even happen naturally on our planet, and they are changes. What we want to do with human consciousness is to move towards them, not away from them. It's never going to help you to do this, as you know, because it just keeps coming. And so what we can do is to say, higher self, shall I, you know, have this be one of my causes? Shall I challenge this? But not challenging the guys that are doing it, because one of the most important lessons I ever learned was, don't become the knight in shining armor and attack the bad guys. That's really not the point, and you won't win. So attack the issue of it, the reality of it, and change that. So we can imagine that those chemtrails just dissolve in the upper atmosphere, or that they switch back into the unmanifest. There are many ways that you could play with that and have it be something that helps you to use the gifts that you were born with. So right now, let's just do a little exercise in that, because There are chemtrails everywhere. They are toxic to us.
The reason I asked that though is
Pardon me?
the reason I asked that though was one day I was lying in my kayak just back on a lake in Wisconsin,
Yes.
watching a beautiful cloud.
Yeah.
And it vanished in front of my eyes, and I said, whoa, what happened? My guide said, we can do that, you know. And I thought, okay. And that's what I was thinking, why can't we do that?
Well, we can.
Yes.
There's no
Thank
why.
you.
We can do it. All we have to do is to focus on it. In the
and-
same way that has always been something that at our Nijoni school we used to play with that with the kids. Look up there at that cloud. Let's just poof that cloud. Whoop. And so you can do the same thing with radiation. You can neutralize it, or the chemtrails. So close your eyes, take a deep breath into your body, and bring into your mind's eye those chemtrails following the airplanes. And just extend your consciousness, pick one, extend your consciousness to it. And then just draw from the frequencies of the cosmos the highest, fastest energy, photon light, and laser it out to those chemtrails. Just let the photon light just dissolve it away so that you see the sky, so that it's gone. Just imagine it in your own way. Dissolve it. Just take a deep breath and open your eyes. See, just doing this allows us to remember that we have a purpose in life. We have a purpose. And one of the things I think is so important in today's world is we become very passive. You know, we'd rather watch our movies. And what we need to do is to look at everything that we see around us and really look at its theme. If you're watching a movie or you're reading a newspaper and it's saying this is happening or this is this, ask yourself, how can I participate in that? Maybe you're seeing a great spy movie, you know. How can I participate in that? Send energy to that, you know. If we use everything, it's not like this is good and this is bad and you shouldn't watch this kind of movie or you shouldn't eat this kind of food, but rather to say, here this is, here's, as you said so beautifully, here's my response to this, here's what I have to give to this. And if we did that, we would begin to stretch out our holographic consciousness. In other words, we can do many things at once. It's just where your focal point alights at any moment. That flicker, that peripheral flicker. And that's what happens when we're intuitive. We have that little flicker that comes. And that brings something that's out there into that moment of recognition. And once we have that recognition, we can respond to it. So here's what I have for that. And we go right on doing whatever it is in our hearts to do. Sometimes people feel that they only have value if the world sees them as spiritual or the world sees them as doing something that helps humanity. Now, the world doesn't need to see you do anything. You need to see you do something. And that doing is really the focal point of consciousness. Thank you. What else?
Could you talk about, you mentioned the fear already, but could you talk more about it, why it has become such an ingrained theme in humanity? I mean, we could have chosen joy. Why is it that fear drives us so much?
Well, whoever implanted it, you know, again, we have to look back at the fact that we have never had cultures or religions or societies that supported the power of joy or the individuation or the creativity. We've never had that. We come from a long 500,000, a million years of squeezing in. And there was purpose for fear. I mean, the physiological body has a mechanism for fear because it's about survival. But that's that does not include an expanded consciousness that's aware of the fact that the body comes and goes, that life passes, that life comes. It hasn't had an expanded cosmic view. So there's never been a place for us to relax enough to say joy has power. And it's so interesting because, nothing is ever created except from that absolute cosmic joy. People say, well, look at war, somebody has been raped and then there's a baby that comes from that. From what my higher self shows me is that even in that situation, life does not occur without a point of joy. In other words, there is the power of choice there. And that choice is not for punishment, it's to illuminate, it's to rebalance, it's to open up. And we always have a choice. You can either say, oh, this is created in terror, or look at the gift of this. Life has come from this. So we haven't learned yet the sacredness of life without the squeezing of the fear of life. We're so afraid of life that of course we're afraid of death. And so we don't utilize our lives. So that fear is deeply psychogenetically imprinted. And because it's so heavy and dense, it's easier for the emotional body to repeat that. Whereas ecstasy, rapture, bliss, and joy, it's a flicker. It comes, and it seems as if we have this joy, and then the mental chatter comes in there. Yeah, well, that won't last, or you're going to lose it anyway, or who cares, or yakety, yakety, yak. These are the possessive energies that we have attached through collective negative astral consciousness. And we are peeling those away. That's why we have the negativity that we have on the planet right now. It's just coming up from the soil because it has to be released. And it's not going to stay here forever. And so we have the power of choosing joy. When I do consultations with people, I always look for that moment. What was a moment when you really trusted yourself, when you really loved yourself, when you felt powerful, when you felt connected to the cosmos? Go into that moment. Because the moment that you pull that back into your consciousness, it begins to ripple through. People begin to relax. And then we have the power of choosing the joy. I don't know. I think it's because we still have fear of that joy. After all, for the last few hundred years, we really got into this cycle of the intellect, the mind, the power of the mind, not the power of consciousness. We're just coming into that higher mind octave. And so the mind said we must be mature. We can't be silly. We can't be careless. We can't play. We must be diligent. We must be watching for danger. And it drummed out the joy. Because joy is present at the moment. It's living in the moment. It's not going, oh, but in the next instant I'm going to be sad. I swing up into the joy, but then I crash down into the sadness. Why do we crash down into the sadness or the depression? Because we have not learned how to hold these fast, high frequencies. We don't get them. We don't. Most of our religions even say, well, you can't have a direct connection with the God or the power or the divine source. And so that which would nourish the highest energy of bliss and joy is never applauded in this. When people do that, we say, we don't value them. We say, oh, this person is silly. They have no value. They're not paying attention. They're childish. And so it belongs to us to choose joy and to give it value. We are the agents of change. We are the ones that say, I will be joyful and I will spread that. It's amazing to me to watch. In Chinese medicine, we describe different kinds of personalities, or actually the way the qi moves through the body. And one of them is called the full heart. And people who have a full heart are the kinds of people that are always being joyful, always being silly, always being expansive. And what I notice about people like that is that a lot of other people can't stand them. They really don't like them. They really don't. When you have somebody who's, always being a Pollyanna in your face, it bothers people. It bothers them because they don't have that, and they don't, so therefore they say, well, if I don't have it, you don't get it either. Or you're fake, you're not really real. Well, sometimes people use that full heart, this is true as well. They use it as a defense mechanism to survive. They've had so many sorrows or terrible, unspeakable things happen to them that they choose to be the Pollyanna. Everything's fine because I'm not looking over there, And why would we punish them or pop their bubble, so to speak, when that's the way they have found that they can survive in the world? But there is that energy, the full heart, that just is that way. And so we have to say, well, I want to be with somebody who's full heart. I have a full heart. Yes.
This is the time where I have to quote a young man who, after very carefully considering for maybe 3 to 5 seconds, turned to his grandmother, who was sitting right here, and he was at age 4. He said, "Grandma, I think everyone is a miracle."
Look at that.
Grandson.
A 4-year-old.
Yes.
A 4-year-old.
And I'd also like to express my gratitude to you for the wealth of information you share.
Thank you, Michelle.
You mentioned that putting a spot of iodine on
Yes.
you to deal with radiation,
Yes.
potential poisoning, the thyroid, and so forth. And one thing that you mentioned last night that I cannot have you depart without speaking with me privately or publicly, because I got a vision on how to bridge cultures. In Bolivia, the McDonald's Corporation, the restaurants gave up on their 6 or 8 franchises or whatever they had there because the people were too intelligent to give up their tamales and buy into the fast, crappy food.
Yes.
And I have concerns about this consumerism culture and how everybody is amassed in the cities and all of the heinous preparations for whatever may happen to them with the economic things that are also in play. And I just had this waking vision of going to Bolivia and learning how having some Bolivians teach me, my son, and my granddaughter, and his wife as well, how to farm, and that we would relay this information back to our culture in the form of some educational
Fantastic.
movie or something. But you mentioned that you've done some work and perhaps have some contacts down or some information that would be useful for me to maybe move into this.
Well, we can definitely have a conversation about that.
I
This
would
is what I
welcome
mean
that.
about creativity and vision, to see, well, here could be a connection, and to honor the wisdom of all of these cultures, but not to have illusions about them. I lived in Bolivia for quite a while, and not to have, and to think again, oh, they have the answer, but to explore their wisdom and then to apply that to a reality. The soils in Bolivia are very interesting. Bolivia is like 3 different countries: the altiplano, the middle level, and the lower level, the jungle area. And so, again, just the effect of asking for someone to teach you something brings them a sense of themselves, to bring those connections together, to bring them here, to bring you there. That's the beauty of being in the Peace Corps, was always this idea of bridging. You just take your body somewhere. It doesn't really matter what you're doing there. That's why I think that traveling is so important.
Yes.
Because just being someplace, wandering a street someplace,
Yes.
you are influencing the perspective and the possibilities. And so I think that that's a very exquisite thing.
Yes, I spent
And we
my
need to-
summer when I was 17 as a visitor living with a family under the experiment in international living.
Yes,
And I stayed in Orizaba, Veracruz.
yes,
And I'd spent the year before with a Costa Rican boy who'd come to Long Island
yes,
to my school, and we became close friends because
Yes.
I didn't really feel like I related well into this environment I'd grown up in. And we became close friends, and I helped him socialize in English, and he helped me with my Spanish, but more importantly, I was surrounded by his family and
yes,
associates. And I was in 10th grade, and as he was very chistoso, a joker, and as a practical joke, it's spontaneous, because I wasn't in on it until he did it. He introduced me to someone who would become my Spanish teacher in 12th grade or 11th grade, and he introduced me as an exchange student from Costa Rica. And I gave the customary hand, mucho gusto en conocerla, señora. And she prided herself in being a dialectician, even knowing the Quechuan and between Cuban and Puerto Rican. And apparently I fooled her because she started going at me at a mile a minute. And her eyes turning red. And we all burst out laughing when she realized what it was. And she recommended me to this program.
yes,
And it was 4 weeks, 3 weeks with the family and another week traveling. And just before I left, the last 2 nights, couple of nights, I had very furtive time trying to sleep because I had Spanish and English going on in my head at the same time. The first night was hard. Second night, I kind of relaxed into it, and I lost my English. My language had shifted, my thoughts and thought patterns and speech patterns, and I woke up fluent.
exactly. They say that the first time that you dream in another language, you then have absorbed that. And my higher self says that all of us have lived in all cultures. And so let me bring that back into something for everyone here, which is, of course, that we have all lived in every culture in many lifetimes and spoken many languages, you know. And so it's important to recognize that we can make those links and that we can use our dreams in a way that makes us joyous, that makes us happy. And the point that I wanted to make about what you were saying is that all of your experiences, whether you were a child or you went somewhere as a teenager or in school, or you met somebody, all of the magic of our lives that we might not even think about. There is not a flicker of anything you have ever done that does not have purpose. In other words, you might have had a bad experience, or you might have done this job or that job or met this person. Everything that we do, everything that we see, everything that we hear, all of our 70 senses contribute to the reinvention of who we are. So there's never a lost experience, something that didn't have worth to us, that didn't build our character, that didn't build who we are. And once we begin to realize that, again, as we say at the Light Institute, what is the gift in each experience? And so as we begin to see that, you were using the word gratitude, as we begin to have that gratitude, I had this experience or this experience, it might be 20 years later, and suddenly you're having ideas that were born from an experience you had as a teenager. And so it's when we look at our lives this way, that we can free ourselves from that judgment that says, you know, oh, I blew it, or I wasn't successful, or my dream didn't happen. But rather, each thing is supporting me in building a new sense of self and reinventing myself in a way that spreads out my potential in the planet. And so it's important for us to think that way and not to think about, and through depression, oh, I made a mistake or I did something wrong, but rather each thing gives me a new illumination. So that's very important. What else? We can say something else.
You had something too?
Well, I was curious about the overlay of time and dimension. So last week when we were doing the call to rain exercise that we do, you suggested that we think of some other place on the planet where there's a lot of water and call it to New Mexico.
Yes.
And then also I was thinking, you know, there used to be an ocean here, and so in my imagination I was going back to that ocean and bringing it here, even though it was in another time and space.
Fantastic.
So, and anyway, it just occurred to me, and I did that today too, and so it was kind of interesting the thought behind the overlay of time and dimensions.
That's right. And of course, just coming into Galisteo, that kind of energy will begin to trickle up into your consciousness, because Galisteo is a time and an energy vortex. And so it will take you all around those energies. And I love that you bring that up, that you remembered that this was an inland sea. And so what does a sea do? A sea sits here and the air draws the moisture up and then it comes back down. That's the process of hydration on this planet, you know, so that you focused on that inland sea. This inland sea is only about 500 feet down from us, which is nothing. If you go 500 feet down in Galisteo, you'll hit brackish water. And it rocks. Sometimes if you just sit here, you can feel this gentle feminine rocking of that sea. And so we can call upon, in the same way that we look at other lifetimes, and we think of them as something that relates to time. But that's why I wrote that book, Time is an Illusion. Only in the crystallized third dimension do we encapsulate it in our idea of time. Our idea of time is not universal. And so those energies that we would call past, present, and future are circulating around and can be plucked from us. So if you think about that inland sea, then you have moved into what would now be another dimension, but was once the third dimension. And so what you're talking about is really an incredible concept, that you can slice through dimensions and pluck, maybe from another lifetime, from another galaxy, from another dimension, an energy that you can bring forward and utilize, harvest in this reality that we have now. And the more that people think the way that you are thinking, the more we will be able to resolve our situations. I mean, after all, galactics have been wielding energy forever and ever and ever. We could harvest from them that information that would change our way of resolving energies. And so the important thing is to realize that there's a part of you that sits in the stillness of the center of your soul. And from that point, you can travel out, not just in the astral dimension, but into many dimensions, into many potentials, and pull the energies from them and actually change what is going on in our third dimension. Because we are all here at a time when we do have an overlay now. Before, basically all we had was the astral dimension overlay. And astral and third dimension are in simultaneous space. But now we have other dimensions that we can utilize simply by just exactly what you did. Pluck that and bring it into this dimension so that it rains here. It rains here, or whatever else would serve humanity. It's a great and brilliant thing you've just brought into view here that gives us a horizon of new potential to solve our problems, or to bring something that brings joy, that brings beauty, that reminds us. You know, of course, the trick is to find whatever is there, to find its utility or its beauty. You know, and when we see that, for example, Galisteo is not the most beautiful place in the world, physically, but it has an energy of such harmony and such sweetness and such life force power that it can nourish in us creativity and that capacity to extend out. Same is true in relationship. Whenever we want to end something, we have to really embrace it, and that's how we set it free. And so thank you. I love that. I will do that tonight myself. only because we have an inland sea am I able to live here, because I miss the ocean very, very much. And so often I find myself imagining that I'm laying on this very salty, it's very salty and sweet at the same time, this inland sea that held the Galisteo Basin. So thank you, I love that very, very much. And that brings me to something that I would say to each and all of us, which is that it is important for us not to be afraid of trying on other hats, of seeing ourselves in many different bodies, of bringing from those bodies intelligence and wisdom and love and joy that we may not feel right now, but that by simply shining the light on it, we can actually choose it to be a part of our lives. How do we have something come into reality? We have to choose it. And to choose something is to actually call it to us. You know, to use magnetism, because our earth functions on magnetism, to extend out our energy, magnetize and pull something to us. And to never flicker with, do I have the right to do it, or could it happen? But let me try it. And that's why we're here right now. And so as you leave this room today, I hope that you will feel that childlike quality of, I can do it, let me do it, let me be it. Because that's what brings the joy, the adventure of life. Nothing to lose, no harm to come to us all. My great love to each and all.